If you're going to hold the Muslims responsible for bin Laden, if you're going to hold the Christians responsible for the Crusades and the Inquisition, why? Because Torquemada professed to be a Christian and carried out things in the name of Christianity. If Christians bear some blame for that, it seems only fair that regimes that do terrible things in the name of atheism, in the name, in other words, of creating a new man and a new utopia, divorced from the shackles of traditional religion, be held accountable for those things. Stalin saw himself as an atheist, as did a whole line of Soviet dictators, beginning with Lenin. And so to then say, well, gee, but you know, the czars had their own secret police, and there happened to be an Orthodox church. Stalin really got the idea from those guys. And by the way, Mao was born a Buddhist, even though he renounced all that and embraced communism and atheist ideology and killed tens of millions of people in the name of this atheist ideology. No, we still get to blame the Buddhists because they were really behind it. What kind of argument is this? If you're going to hold Christians responsible for the crimes of Christianity, let's hold atheism responsible for the crimes of atheism.
But you say in the name of, and there's nothing that was done in these cases was done in the name of atheism. It was done in the name of faith and in the worship and absolute trust in someone who is in one case a seminarian, and in the other case, as you say, a Buddhist. You have to compare like with like. Show me a secular regime that admires the philosophy and ideas I've been putting forward this evening that degenerated for that reason.
I'll show it to you.
Otherwise, you have to accept everything, which you hadn't, by the way, up till now. You had not accepted what I'd said about the faith-based and nature of and the alliance with Orthodox and official Christianity of fascism and National Socialism. And since you didn't decide to take that on before, I think you must agree you have to take it on now.
If you look at let's take three regimes. Pol Pot in Indochina, Mao in China, and Stalin in Russia. Now,
the ones I wasn't asking you about.
The ones that have...
you've already spoken about.
No, because you asked me to demonstrate that they actually were acting based on atheism. You're acting as though they were tyrants who happened to be atheists. I'm going to show you that their actions were based on an atheist ideology. In other words, these were professedly Marxist regimes. All you have to do is crack open the collected works of Marx to see that religion is a kind of drug that blinds you from social injustice. Marx says, in a sense, that the communist revolution can't come until religion is gotten rid of. And these professed Marxist regimes act based on that ideology. So what more do you want?
In terms of the social history of atheism, it seems to me, when I began this debate, and still seems to me now, overwhelmingly clear that while Nazism in Germany, communism in Russia, communism in China even, communism in Cambodia certainly had religious elements. Who would deny that? Why is that an interesting claim? The governing apparatus of ideology, no matter what Hitler had to say about his devotion to a warrior like Christ, involved the proposition among those who ruled these states and their entourage that no power was greater than their own. They acted on that proposition. They were restrained by nothing, and we saw the consequences. Now you may say, and perhaps say truly, that in their heart of hearts some Catholics adopted the rituals of the SS and took communion after an especially arduous day murdering innocent women in the fields of Poland. Could be true. I don't deny it. But what we must ask ourselves, if this is to be an intellectually serious discussion, is not whether there were infiltrations of religious thought in the worst tyrannies of mankind. Of course there were. That goes without saying. But whether something fundamental had changed in the diapason of thought that made these atrocities possible. And I say, yes, there was.
We'll propose the motion, if you like to be formal, that the new Europe should prefer the new atheism. John Lennox will take the opposing view. One thing I want to do, and this is something Intelligence Squared and their debates do, and it's very useful, is just to take a very easy, quick, preliminary show of hands, those who feel that they're in favour of the proposition, those who are against, and perhaps just as important, by show of hands, those who are undecided, and then we can do a sort of before and after thing. Can I just briefly ask you, those who come in convinced that the motion is broadly one that they would support, just show. Right? Those who feel at the moment that it's one that they would oppose, slightly bigger. Those who are genuinely or diplomatically at the moment undecided. That's about the same, and some of you haven't expressed an opinion. We'll see how it is at the end.
Now, the blanket statement, religion poisons everything, followed by a litany of the evils of religion, is about as useful as saying science poisons everything, followed by a litany of the evils of science, poisoning the environment and creating napalm and poison gas. Abuse must be distinguished from use. Abolishing religion, after all, to get rid of its abuse is about as intelligent as abolishing science to get rid of pollution, or abolishing money to get rid of greed. I have a passion for an open public square in Europe that encourages people of different worldviews to sit at the same table, neither afraid nor paralysed by political correctness or intemperate language to say what they believe. The shrill intolerance of extremists of both kinds, religious and secular, threatens the existence of such a public square. My worry is I'm not convinced that the new atheists wish to preserve our freedom to do that in public or even at home, because the new atheism appears to share with fundamentalist religion a frightening degree of intolerance. They talk about Enlightenment values, even calling themselves the Brights. But it was the Enlightenment thinkers who began to argue that those who could not be educated or reformed should be eliminated, a view that set the stage for the 20th century. None of us wants another reign of terror. Yet Sam Harris, one of the new atheist leaders, writes, "Some propositions are so dangerous that it may even be ethical to kill people for believing them." Will it be the new atheists, ladies and gentlemen, who in the end decide what those propositions are? Ladies and gentlemen, it was only because the wall created by the previous version of the new atheism was pulled down that the new Europe can exist. Do we really want to build another wall? Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to put this to a vote, but I also want to check the don't knows as well. The motion is that the new Europe should prefer the new atheism. Will those who are in favour please show? And will those who are against please show? I'm going to count this again in a moment. Let's see the don't knows, who've diminished greatly since the beginning. Let's look at this. It's very, very close. We don't have the facility
I think
to count.
Professor Lennox got the majority.
Well, I think let's just check again. Those in favour of the motion and those against. I declare the motion lost. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.
We had a very spirited debate on the question of faith in Edinburgh on the day of the Russian invasion of Georgia, as I recall, if you want to triangulate it in your minds. And I made the mistake of calling for a vote on the motion before the debate and then another one afterwards. And he won. So that's why I've been prepared to come all the way to...
John Lennox, perhaps you want to tell us...
It's a revenge trip in case you want.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the moral argument. It seems to me there that you've misunderstood the argument in that we're looking for an objective foundation for the moral values and duties that we both, I think, want to affirm. It's not a matter of whether or not we can know what is right and wrong, or that we need God to tell us what is right and wrong. It's rather that we need to have some sort of an objective foundation for right and wrong. Wouldn't you agree on your view, it's simply the sociobiological spin-offs of the evolutionary process, and that therefore these do not provide any sort of objective foundation for moral values and duties?
That could be true, yes. That could well be true.
He's saying evidence for what?
evidence for a beginning of the universe.
Yes, well, we know that. Nobody just.
All right, well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence.
But
because there's a beginning doesn't imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah, but, but the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't... computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless.
Well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it timeless? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function. It takes
no,
time.
this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent?
Yes, you have to be logically coherent.
Oh, no, this computer is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
A computer is a physical
Not this computer.
Object.
Oh,
well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
I say to those that are promoting the atheist perspective is the only logical conclusion, because I used to hold to that quite rigorously as well. I think there's a real flaw here in the logic. Imagine that you are asked to draw a circle that includes all of the knowledge that will ever be determined about the universe in every possible sphere. I think all of us would draw a very large circle. Now draw within that circle what you know. Would that not be a subset? A very small one, I think, unless one is afflicted with great arrogance. A very small subset indeed. Now suppose that the knowledge of the existence of God is outside of your circle. That has a serious mathematical likelihood when you consider the proportionalities here. How then can it be a logical statement to say, I know with certainty that there is no God? That seems like the strongest kind of fallacy. Agnosticism, I grant you, a more intellectually honest approach. Strong atheism, to say, there can be no God and I know that's the case, falls apart on the altar of logical debate. And really, I think, ought to be considered as its own form of blind faith.
You admit that you cannot get ethics from science. In your book, A Devil's Chaplain, science has no methods for deciding what is ethical. And I find it very interesting, reading one of your other books, River Out of Eden, to find what I understand is your analysis of what the universe is like at bottom. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. Now that seems to me to be saying that good and evil don't exist, so I don't even know where you get the moral criteria to discuss it. You rightly expect me to differentiate between atheists. I would like you to write another book in which you differentiate between religions, because they are not all the same. Some support fanaticism, others don't. I want to address the who designed the designer question, because it's the old schoolboy question, who created God? I'm actually very surprised to find it as a central argument in your book, because it assumes that God is created. And I'm not surprised, therefore, that you call the book The God Delusion, because created gods are by definition a delusion. If you say, if there is a God, you have to ask who created God, that means that you're reduced to thinking about created gods. Well, none of us believe in created gods, Jews, Muslims, or Christians. And I think that argument then is entirely beside the point, and perhaps you ought to put it on your shelf marked celestial teapots where it belongs.
I don't think it's a very important question whether Jesus existed. There are some historians, most historians think he did, some historians
They certainly do. I couldn't find an ancient historian that didn't.
Well, there are one or two. When you look at history, and let's leave aside, maybe I alluded to the possibility that some historians think Jesus never existed. I take that back. Jesus existed.